Good morning and welcome to another episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Today, we get to talk about this adorable little bird, the shrike. If you're interested, stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's review. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Wait a minute. Why is this at the beginning? Oh man, we must have crossed into the time tombs. You know how everything goes with those time tombs. Time flows backwards, so you see the future before, well, and you're in that future's past. I don't know, it just gets all confused. Hold on, let me just rewind and go back to the beginning. All right, good morning. So, are you ready to hear all about the shrike? Okay, for real, not this little birdie. It's actually a very different shrike. It's more like this creepy guy. This dude right here. This guy is creepy and very mysterious. So today's book, we're talking about Hyperion, the first book in the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. So this one is all about the shrike and the mysterious creature that guards the time tombs. And time tombs where everything flows backward in time, so events of the future we're seeing in that future's past. And depending on what timeline we're in or what point along the timeline we are, we're going to see different future events as time slowly goes backwards. So Hyperion is set in a future approximately 700 to 800 years in our future. And there's this intergalactic empire essentially made up of a few different planets and they're all connected through these like teleportation devices where you can instantly travel between worlds. And if you cannot do that or you're not able to do that, then you could travel between the stars on these spaceships. And so the world that Dan Simmons is building here, this future world, some really interesting aspects to it that I actually like that I haven't really seen introduced in the whole science fiction genre before. One of those aspects is this idea of a time debt. So while you're traveling through space and as far as the theory of relativity and physics work, the faster you travel, the slower time moves relative for you versus everybody else. So this idea of a time debt is you could be traveling to different stars for a couple of months, say, and for you only 3 or 4 months might have passed, but it might have been 5 or 10 years for the people on the world you left or the world that you're going to. And so this idea of this time debt being incurred for space travel is a really awesome idea that's kind of built within this world that Dan Simmons has built. I really love that idea behind this book and what's happening here within that aspect of it. And another aspect that we have within this book is this idea of the shrike. So this mysterious creature that guards the time tombs. He's so mysterious, in fact, or he, she, we don't know what it is, but this creature who is responsible for the deaths of countless people and viciously guides it. He's like this avenging angel of death, essentially. And there's this entire cult and church that has been built up around this creature. This enigma of what this thing is and where it came from and what it's doing. Nobody really knows. The shrike is just a mystery, and everybody wants to know what's going on with the Shrike, and everybody seems to have these unique stories of their experiences with the Shrike, or the cult of the Shrike, or the Church of the Shrike, and their temples and their religiosity and everything that's behind that. And so we've kind of got three different aspects going on here, in terms of the overall plot line. So we've got the Shrike guarding the time tombs and the mystery there. We've got the intergalactic hegemony, which is this society that's basically governed by a techno core, or artificial intelligence techno core built within the whole books in the world itself. And the general idea is that it kind of sets it up like the techno core, the artificial intelligence that's controlling everything, it somehow has this uneasy balance or relationship with the Senate and the governing body of people, of humans within this world. And yet it is the technocore that has this ability to predict the future to like a 99% accuracy within a couple centuries. But the world of Hyperion seems to be the one anomaly. So it's the one place the technocore, again, this network of artificial intelligence, has resisted bringing into the greater galactic hegemony, because it seems to be this anomaly which they can't control or predict, largely in part to the time tombs themselves, as well as this mysterious creature, the Shrike, which is really kind of causing problems for everybody involved, of course. Of course, the galactic hegemony and the galactic senate think they're the ones that are in charge, but in reality, we know that they are not actually the ones that are in charge, but rather it is the AI technocore which is influencing everything, right? So, and then we have this mysterious group called the Ousters. We don't really know much about who the Ousters are or what they want. We do know that they are also interested in Hyperion, and that it is coming down to some kind of galactic war between, at the very least, the galactic hegemony and the Ousters. And of course things come to a head at Hyperion itself. I do want to know more about the Ousters, but I haven't really had the opportunity to learn much about the Ousters, who they are, and perhaps in future books of the Hyperion Cantos. This is only the first book in this series. We'll learn more about the Ousters, who they are, what they want, and where they come from. So just kind of going to the main characters and plots within this book. So in this book, its basic plot line or premise is there are these 7 pilgrims who are on a pilgrimage to visit the time tombs, and they're on a pilgrimage to the Shrike because they know the time tombs may be opened again. So they're on their journey there, and each of them takes some time to tell their story of why they're on this pilgrimage, what's happening to them, what their connection to Hyperion and the Shrike and the time tombs is. So I just want to briefly touch on some of those stories, not all of them, but just some of them, the ones that are most interesting to me within this book. As one of them is the story of Father Dury. He had gone on this pilgrimage, or this visit to Hyperion. He wanted to visit the Bikura people, but falls in with this group called the 70. And it just kind of comes this really disturbing and freaky story, really, of the 70 and what they were. It's basically this group of people that have been embedded with like this parasitic cruciform, essentially. And they don't die the true death, as they call it. The true death being once you're dead, you do not come back. But this is a group of people that consistently and regularly can be resurrected. And they seem to have this shrine to the Christian church or God that is thousands of years older than Christianity on old Earth. And so it's not really understood where this came from. And of course, we all know that it's likely linked to the time tombs. But Father Dury here, he falls in with this group, and he's trying to figure out how to get out of that, how to get back to where he should be, but he finds that himself trapped. He himself becomes of the cruciform, essentially, in this parasitic cross that embeds itself into its body, into the body of its host. And in an effort to get rid of it, he recognizes that this cruciform does not like pain, essentially. So he has to go through this trial of giving himself incredibly torturous pain as he's sitting, or as he's trying to get this out of him. So part of that process is he goes to this place called the Fire Forest, which is filled with like these Tesla trees. So here's a picture I found online of a Tesla tree. It's kind of give you an idea, but basically there are these trees that are spewing fire and electricity on a constant, regular basis. And he finds himself essentially hung up on a Tesla tree in the form of a cross or crucified, kind of like the idea of a crucified God, like you see in the Bible with Jesus. And he's constantly going through this crucifixion cycle of dying in agony and torture in an effort to get this cruciform out of him, only to be resurrected and go through the process over and over and over again. So it's really kind of this disturbing allegorical story of what is going on with Father Dury on Hyperion, where he fell into this 70, and how that all links up to the Shrike itself. Again, this mysterious creature. And the other story that really kind of stuck with me, or I found interesting, was the story of this girl who essentially she had herself gone to study the time tombs and the Shrike, and kind of as a archaeological scientific research, but something happened while she was there. And this girl, whose name is Rachel, and she became afflicted with this ailment, or this time disease, in which she started aging backwards instead of forwards. So she would go through, and every day that she was alive, she would be a day younger. And her father and her mother are having to figure out how they're going to deal with this, and can't find a solution anywhere. And so years later, when she's now an infant, Rachel and her father are on a pilgrimage to the time tombs and the Shrike in an effort to reverse this, because at this point there's only a few weeks left of her life, as she is now an infant, only a few weeks old. And so he is desperate for answers, desperate to prevent, I guess you could say, the death of his baby, and to kind of reverse the effect that's happened to her. So those, along with one final one, just the detective story, is basically this idea of this hybrid comes to this detective. And Cyprid is like an artificial intelligence human hybrid who's like this resurrected personality or person merged with artificial intelligence. And they can't really die either, but he was basically murdered, and it causes this like memory wipe, but not an entirety of a memory wipe, only recent memory wipe. So he wants to figure out who killed him and why, because he knows that this happened, but he can't remember anything. And so this also leads back to this trip to Hyperion and the Shrike and the temple and all that good stuff. So this is a really interesting book for sure. And there's a lot of different aspects which we could probably cover in great detail, each and every one of the stories of the 7 pilgrims. But for brevity's sake, we're not going to do that on this book. But I will say that Dan Simmons has set up a really interesting world and story here with his Hyperion Cantos. I am certainly enjoying it. It is definitely a worthwhile read. And I think that you should definitely check it out, especially if you are a science fiction fan. It is absolutely worth your time. I'm really enjoying it. I'm thinking the Hyperion Cantos is a great read for those of you that do like the science fiction side of things. So definitely check it out, pick it up, starting with Hyperion, then the Fall of Hyperion being the next one in the series after this. So of course, if you're interested, stay tuned for that review. But when all said and done, those are just my thoughts. This is what I wanted to say about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought. Did you read Hyperion? Have you enjoyed it? Do you think that you might want to read it? Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And thanks again so much for watching. So those are just my thoughts on the Hyperion by Dan Simmons. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Until then, keep on reading. Bye.